Hello everyone and welcome back to the Ryan Retro channel. In today's video we're going to look at PlayStation 3 emulation on the KONKR Pocket Fit. And this is the G3 Gen 3 version with 12GB of RAM. It's Ryan from the end of the video here. I just realized that I didn't actually tell you what settings I'm using for this test. So I've basically kept everything default except I have changed the resolution to 1080p to match this screen. And for some reason I have turned off MSAA. I'm not sure why I did that. I think I just did that when I was playing around with settings and I forgot to change it back. So that's just a random setting turned off. Apart from that, everything is completely default except for the driver, which I have changed to the most recent Mesa Turnip 25.3.0 revision 10, which just released a few days ago. I found this is working really well for all of my testing with this G3 Gen 3 chip and also the 8 Gen 2 chip as well. So I highly recommend trying this driver. Okay, apart from those, everything else is default. We could probably get better performance if we lowered the resolution down to 720p, but I'm going for 1080 to try and maximize this screen to its best ability. So with all that said, let's jump into the game testing. I have a wide variety of games to pick from, and just to let you know, I have tested a lot more games than this, and all of the ones that you can see on the screen right now, all unfortunately didn't work. They either just didn't open whatsoever, or they crashed within a few seconds of the game. And one more such game is Lollipop Chainsaw, which got through the opening cinematic and then quickly gave me a disc reading error. So let's just try that one more time to kick things off and see if we can progress a little bit further. And once we get this one out of the way, we can jump into some other games which should be working better. Here we go, Lollipop Chainsaw. Right away, you can see the black levels of this device are insane. They are OLED levels, genuinely. Let's open up the side panel so I can show you the settings we're running with today, which is maximum performance mode, high fan mode, and I've capped the frame rate to 60 frames per second. We can raise that to 144 just because, but none of these games are going to run more than 60 frames per second anyway. And let's also turn on the performance overlay. It's going to be quite tiny up there, but hopefully if I zoom into the screen, you can see the frame rate. Let's jump into the game, and I'm going to skip the intro cutscene because it's really weird. It seems to have remembered my last checkpoint, which is a good sign. So here is where I got to before, and it told me that I couldn't continue. Let's see if we can carry on through this time. We have only around 18 frames per second, which is not particularly great. PlayStation 3 emulation is still really new and immature, so it's far from great right now. And once again, we get that disc read error, which I've only so far got on this one particular game. So let's just skip on past this one, and I'll show you other games that I've got working better. Next up is Dragon Age Origins. I've only just began the game, but it's surprisingly running at a pretty smooth 60 frames per second.
Just follow the yelling. When Nan's unhappy, she makes sure everyone knows it.
What a stupid accent that guy's got, right? So far this game is just a running and cinematic simulator, but it's running pretty smoothly. Even when the frame rate dips down, it still only dips down to around 35 frames per second at the lowest.
If I can't get into that larder, I'll skin both of you useless elves, I swear it.
Oh my god, she's a bit mean.
And you! Your bloody mongrel keeps
I think I'm ready for my combat training. Maybe you should be put down. This game is seemingly running really nicely. It's not a perfect 60, but it's definitely playable. So I'm going to continue my save with this after I finish today's video and see if I can dispose of this woman. Next up, we have the Family Guy game. And I think in a previous video I made of the Retroid Pocket 5 playing PlayStation 3, this was the only game I could get working, which made me really excited for the future of PlayStation 3 emulation. PlayStation 3 emulation still clearly needs quite a bit of work, because we're only using 60 to 70% of our CPU and GPU. We're not really stressing the system much with this game, but we still lose frames quite often. It feels like this should be a game that's an easy, solid 30 frames per second, but we are compiling shaders quite a lot. Okay, this is a game that looks really nice with the cartoony graphics, and I think it's going to run pretty well here. We are losing some frames when we're compiling shaders, but apart from that, it's pretty smooth. Our next game is Fat Princess, one of the highest rated PlayStation Network games, and a game that I feel like wouldn't be allowed to be released now, even though it's clearly just a bit of fun. I had this game on some kind of PlayStation collector's bundle so many years ago, but I never played it because it looked too silly. Now I'm jumping with joy at the thought of playing it. It seems I can't play with others, I guess because we don't have access to the PlayStation Network, so I'm going to have to play with myself. Legend of the Fat Princess, Mess About, Gladiate. Mess About sounds a bit British. Let's gladiate. We can pick up hats to change our class, we can attack, we can chop trees, and we can give the princess cake. Interesting. There are far too many pages of that instruction manual, so let's just give it a go. The game looks absolutely beautiful. These cartoony graphics always hold up well. Kill as many enemies as you can. So I guess it's like team deathmatch. Let's go! Oh, I'm actually like a gladiator in the arena. I have to say, the performance so far is absolutely perfect. Well, I have to say, this game is fun. Ow! I was trying to give a review! I was going to say this game is nice and fun and runs perfectly. I think my time is up. Defeat and a thumbs down. That was a very fun game and it ran beautifully. Our next game is going to be Ridge Racer 7. This one crashes you out of the game unless you speed run through the menu and get into the actual game as quickly as possible. I found that with quite a few of these PlayStation games so far, if you don't quickly get into the game, it has a habit of crashing. So we're going to very quickly jump into a game by just spamming the A button, or I suppose the cross button on PlayStation. That is something I hope will be ironed out with more updates to the application. But for now, we got into the game and we are driving. This one is a little bit laggy. The FPS counter at the top of the screen tells us we're getting a pretty smooth 30 frames per second, but it doesn't feel that smooth. It feels somewhere in the 20s to me. And there are also some audio hiccups at points as well, so I would take the frame per second counter with a pinch of salt here. It is not a solid 30 frames per second like it claims to be. At least it doesn't feel that way. It is of course playable, but I would recommend different racing games. We have access to so many racing games on devices like this. Android racing games, PS2 games, so many different options that I wouldn't really opt for this one in particular. Our next game is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This one seems to be running very smoothly. You can usually tell with the PlayStation 3 games how well something's going to run, even just through the loading screen. Some games have quite slow and laggy loading screens, and you know you're going to be in for a tough ride. This one was really smooth and fast to load, and we are easily getting 30 frames per second here, except for when we compile shaders. As we turn around and compile new shaders after each bend, it does sometimes slow to around 20 frames per second, but it's mostly running very nicely. So this is a game that seems like it's going to be nice and playable. I was flicking through the TV channels while compiling games for this video today and testing them out, and one of the channels was playing Madagascar. So I watched the movie and I thought, why not give that game a try as well? This feels like the kind of game that should be nice and easy to run. And it does seem to be that way. Seems to be running nicely at 30 frames per second. We're just at the beginning of the game again, but once again, it loaded so quickly, and everything about it so far has been smooth, which gives me high hopes for the rest of the game. Many games on PlayStation 3 right now still suffer a lot during the loading screens. I'm also remembering now that a lot of these PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 era games have inverted thumbsticks. So moving it up looks down and moving it down looks up. In the Ayaneo control panel over here, we can come to controller and I can invert this Y-axis on the right stick. And just like that, it's now behaving the way I want it to. This Ayaneo control panel is absolutely fantastic, far better than anything I've used on other devices. So just like that, we have the joysticks working the way I want in a matter of a few seconds. And I should have listened to what I'm meant to be doing. Well, this game seemingly runs really smoothly, so let's jump into a different game now. Our next game is Fez. I think this is one of the first games I ever bought for myself on PC with my own money. Mostly because it was really cheap, but it's a very cute little game that can run on almost any device, which is why I'm slightly surprised it's not running that well here. For those of you who don't know about Fez, it's a game where you play this cute little guy wearing a fez, and you have to make your way through each level, which is on a kind of like tower block. But what makes it unique is you can freely rotate the tower, which actually changes how you interact with it. It's very simple. You just jump and climb up these vines. And if I rotate the camera now, I can now make my way through this way. It's nice and simple, and the frame rate says it's around 60 frames per second, but we are dipping here and there. So I could try to jump up onto this ledge up here, and then if I rotate the camera, we're now able to carry on this way. Once again, I move over here to the edge, then rotate the camera, and we're able to carry on moving. Here it seems like I have nowhere to go, but if I rotate the camera again, I think I can now jump up here to this little seagull. We collected one piece of the cube that we need, and let's carry on. Once again, nowhere to go, so we rotate the cube and we keep on moving. The frame rate does dip when rotating around, but it does at least stay above 30, and when we stop rotating, it mostly stays at 60. One issue I found with a lot of PlayStation 3 emulation so far is the audio. If you listen to the audio, it's quite stuttery, which I really don't think it needs to be on such a simple game. So definitely something we need to keep fixing on the PlayStation 3 emulation side. We've now completed our cube, we have a happy little fez-wearing friend, and we can now try to make our way to the end of the level and walk through the door. And there we go, one level completed. A game that's running pretty well here, but could be better if we had smooth audio. Our next game is God of War Chains of Olympus. This game is usually the go-to de facto test for PSP. Here we're obviously running it on PlayStation 3 instead. And I don't want to look too much like ETA Prime over here, but hey, what's going on everybody? That guy's just standing over there watching. Excuse me! Let's just take out this first little boss over here. Such a cool game. The frame rate fluctuates quite a lot. Here is where I feel this FPS counter is a bit deceiving, because some other games like Ridge Racer I played before said they were around 30 frames per second, but they felt choppy and slow. This one also fluctuates down to around 30, but in practice it feels like a solid 60 at all times. There's been no point playing this so far that it's felt anything below 60. It's felt solid, smooth, and the audio hasn't had any issues, so I would take this frame rate with a heap of salt, because I have also noticed in Game Hub testing as well, the Ayaneo frame rate on the screen does not match the Game Hub or Eden frame rate, or basically any frame rate built into an emulator. So I would be quite wary about this frame rate up here. All I can say is it feels very, very smooth. So with that game running so well, what better time to check out a game that never runs well for me on anything? Sly Cooper, Thieves in Time. I've tried a few Sly Cooper games now, and they are notoriously difficult to run. I need to turn off invert Y-axis and go back to my regular joystick orientation. This game doesn't work particularly well on any emulator I've tried before. It seems to be a very demanding game, and also very dark, so I'm going to raise the brightness for this one. Let's see if we can make our way through the map. The frame rate is somewhere in the 20s, which is not terrible by any means. We've got a nice view over the city now, and we're sitting at around 20 to 25 frames per second. It's a very nice looking game, so I do hope I get the opportunity to play it with a smoother frame rate in the near future. This might be one I should try out on my Steam Deck. So this is one that is going to be playable, but it's not going to be the smoothest experience. Sticking with games that are not running perfectly, here is LittleBigPlanet, and you're going to notice some glitching happening. The frame rate doesn't really feel as smooth as the near 30 frames per second it claims. It feels somewhere around 18 to 20 to me. It's also playing copyright music, so not the easiest one to show. It is playable. Another driver might be able to fix these graphical issues, but it's certainly not an experience I really want to continue with. Next up, we have another game that I've struggled to get running smoothly on any of my devices before. This is Ratchet and Clank Future Tools of Destruction. So this is a game I tested recently, either on my Odin 2 Portal or my Snapdragon 8 Elite phone. I actually can't remember. I've been testing so many devices lately. There's going to be a lot of reviews coming soon for you guys to watch. But I did test this game recently, and it ran really poorly. You can see here as well, it's not running particularly well, but it is actually running better than the other device was, whatever that was. Here the frame rate is somewhere in the mid-20s, still occasionally dipping down when we compile shaders like most of the games. But when it's not compiling those shaders and lagging slightly, it does feel very nice and smooth, noticeably smoother than I've had before on any of my other devices. It also sounds great. All those metallic clank sounds just sound really nice. I feel like we're getting really close to good PlayStation 3 emulation. Well, those speakers are so loud in the KONKR, they're great. If we could compile shader caches before we play games, or just somehow find a way to compile the shaders without lagging as much, this would be a really good experience. So yet again, we have a game that is not running perfectly by any means, but is playable and at least half of the time feels really smooth. Rayman Origins runs beautifully here. This is exactly the kind of lightweight game that just runs really nicely on something like this. We have a pretty locked on 60 frames per second, and even if it does occasionally dip slightly below that, you won't feel it. It feels beautifully smooth, it looks fantastic at 1080p, and this one really is a sign into the future of PlayStation 3 emulation, and what we might expect to see with more development in the near future. I of course cannot even make a video without trying to shill Tennis in the Face to more people. This game is just glorious. It's everything a game should be. It's fun, it has great graphics, a great soundtrack, great sound effects. It's just a wonderful game to play. It's also a big hit with non-gamers. If you've got people in the family who are not really big gaming fans, it's just so accessible to anyone. So I do highly recommend giving it a go, and it's only a couple of 100 megabytes. Castle Crashers is one of the classic games of the PS3 era, and just like Tennis in the Face, it's going to run perfectly smooth here. We're going to have no issues whatsoever getting 30 frames per second, and it's going to feel perfectly smooth throughout. With the art style it has, yet again, it looks really nice at 1080p. It has that timeless cartoony graphic style that looks fantastic on these handheld screens. As I was playing these games, one thing became apparent, that the overall performance of games that launch is actually quite good. We can get around 30 or 60 frames per second in most places, and it only really drops below that when we're compiling shaders. And compiling shaders usually happens when you load new areas, new scenes, visit new parts of the map, or even rotate the map in games like Fez. So I was thinking, what kind of games do we not really change scene in? And I realized the answer to that is fighting games. In fighting games, you're basically just conformed to one area. You don't have to keep loading and generating new parts of a map. You're just in one solitary place. So I realized fighting games are actually the best candidate for PS3 emulation right now. So I have a couple of fighting games to show you now that are running really well. And I have tried others in the past. I believe I tried Tekken in the past, and that ran well on one of my other devices too. So let's begin with one that surprised me, which is Ultra Street Fighter 4, which at 20 gigabytes is one of the largest PS3 games. I've set the difficulty to hardest. I'm going to get absolutely wrecked, because I feel like that will be a good way to check out the performance, rather than just me hitting a test dummy. It's been many a year since I've played Street Fighter, and I don't remember any of the buttons except Hadouken and Shoryuken, which I'm pretty sure Chun-Li cannot do. Hit him with the lightning legs! Well, it was going quite well until that happened. So the frame rate seems to be fluctuating down into the 40s right now. I wasn't really able to look at it during the middle of the fight, but it felt nice and smooth. I find that with the PlayStation 3 games, anything above 30 feels pretty nice, as a lot of PlayStation 3 era games played at 30 anyway. This one I guess should be running at 60, but even in the 40s it does feel nice and smooth. It's a more than playable experience. The fact that I'm able to get off any hits at all against the hardest level opponent shows me that it does work. Now if I just knew how to use my super attack, we could be in business. Once again, the art style of this game just looks beautiful on this display. Definitely a good game to play, so if you're into this game, you can play it very well on PlayStation 3 emulation right now. So with fighting games working well, and also cartoony graphics games working well, I decided to combine the two and try one of the BlazBlue games. I always thought that these games looked so nice. So here we are in the kind of tutorial of the game. We're at 60 frames per second. It looks absolutely glorious. I'm going to skip the tutorial, jump into a battle, and just survive purely off vibes. I have no idea what any of the buttons do, but just staring at the frame per second counter, we are solidly on 60 here at 1080p in a beautiful game. I'm going to have to watch some YouTube videos about how to play this, because it seems to be perfectly playable. We are not dropping below 60 even once. And looking at these percentages here, the CPU is only being used 17%, and the GPU is at around 50%. So we're not even taxing the system whatsoever. This seems like a great use of PS3 emulation on a device like the KONKR. So those were some of the games I've been installing and testing over the past week. You do unfortunately still need to install all of those to the internal storage of your device. So this is somewhere where having a bigger internal storage could come in handy. I realized that I forgot to show you the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game. It runs okay, not perfectly, it runs fine. Not the best of these games and not the worst, somewhere in the middle. So if you'd like to play PlayStation 3 on your KONKR Pocket Fit or a similar device, feel free to check out the RPCSX UI Android emulator, which I'll put in the description of this video. And I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please give me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you again next time for some Windows PC testing. Thank you for watching. Bye.